The smell of cedar and wood smoke was coming through the vents of my brother's truck, and I remember thinking that was the last normal thing I noticed before everything changed. My daughter Emma was buckled into the back seat, in her new dress, the one we had spent 2 Saturdays looking for at the Rehearsal Center. The one she called her sparkle dress because it had tiny silver threads woven through the fabric that caught the light when she moved. She was 6 years old and had asked me that morning 3 times whether Grandpa would cry when he saw her walk down the aisle with the ring pillow. I told her 3 times that Grandpa absolutely would. We were 12 minutes from my aunt and uncle's property in Almonte when my phone buzzed on the dashboard. A text from my mother. Call me before you come inside. Don't park in the front. Actually, just wait. Call me first. I called. She didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. My boyfriend Daniel glanced at the phone and then at me and didn't say anything yet. That was the thing about Daniel. He read situations the way other people read weather. He knew when to wait. Emma was in the back seat telling an elaborate story to the small stuffed moose she brought everywhere. She didn't notice I had gone quiet. The property in Almonte had been in my father's family for 2 generations. A wide farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a cedar barn that my grandfather had built with 3 other men from the county in 1974. My cousin Britt was getting married there the next afternoon, and the rehearsal dinner was tonight. About 30 people. The 2 families, the wedding party, close relatives. I had been told we were invited. Emma had been asked 8 months ago to carry the rings. She had a pillow at home she had been practicing with, setting 2 of her hair elastics on it and walking slowly across the living room while Daniel hummed what she called the wedding song. We pulled up the long gravel road. The farmhouse was lit up the way it only ever got for big occasions. String lights along the porch railings, lanterns on the fence posts, cars parked along the far edge of the field. Through the tall front windows, I could see the warm blur of people moving inside. My mother was waiting on the porch steps. She came down toward the car before we had even fully stopped. She was wearing her good coat, the wool one she kept for funerals and Christmas, which meant she had known this conversation was coming for a while and had dressed for it. I got out. Daniel stayed in the car. Emma started to unbuckle herself. "Honey," my mother said. Her voice was the one she used when she needed to seem calm, measured, like a doctor delivering news she had rehearsed. "There's been a little bit of a situation with tonight." "What kind of situation?" She looked past me briefly toward the car, then back. Britt and her mother, my sister, have decided to keep the dinner to just the immediate wedding party and Britt's future in-laws. It's very tight. There really isn't room for, she paused. For the extended family. I stared at her. I'm not extended family. I'm her cousin. Sarah. She said my name like a period at the end of a sentence. And Emma is in the wedding. That's the other thing. She lowered her voice. Britt's future mother-in-law has a granddaughter who's been asked to carry the rings instead. She's the same age, and it made more sense logistically for the family. Emma had gotten herself out of the car. She was standing at the edge of the gravel in her sparkle dress, holding her stuffed moose, looking up at my mother with her head tilted. "Grandma," she said, "am I doing the rings tonight?" My mother crouched down. She had the expression of a woman who had done difficult things before and had decided the fastest way through them was a certain kind of efficient gentleness. "That part might have changed just a little, sweetheart." "What do you mean changed?" I said. I wasn't shouting. I was very deliberately not shouting. "It changed this week. Britt decided 8 months ago that Emma was carrying the rings. We bought the pillow. She has practiced every single day." My mother stood back up and looked at me with something I had seen in her face before. Not guilt, exactly, but the particular expression of someone who has already decided the argument is over and is now managing the aftermath. Britt has been under an enormous amount of pressure with the planning. Her mother thought it would be easier if certain things were simplified, and I agreed to help make that happen. "You agreed," I said. "Sarah, please. When were you going to tell me?" She looked away toward the house. A burst of laughter came through the front windows, bright and unaware. "I was going to call you tomorrow." "Tomorrow. After the rehearsal. After we drove 40 minutes in the dark with a 6-year-old in her dress." She said my name again in that same flat tone. "You know how things get," she said. "When you're there, there's always some kind of tension. And Britt doesn't need that going into her wedding weekend." I went very still. "When you're there." She said it the way people say things they have been thinking for a long time, things they have worn smooth from carrying, like she was finally just leaving it on the table. "What tension?" I said. She didn't answer. I knew, of course. I had known for years what she meant, even when she didn't say it. I was the older one. The one who had left for Toronto at 22 and come back 4 years later on my own terms with a lease and a job, and eventually Emma, and no part of it had involved asking anyone for help. My cousin Britt had stayed. She had been the one at every family dinner, every birthday, every Thanksgiving up in Almonte, with the whole extended family crowded into that farmhouse. She had married into the county, or was about to, and she had our aunt and uncle's full attention and our mother's full endorsement, and the property was going to pass to her side of the family someday, and everyone knew it and nobody said it. I was the one who had left. That was the tension. "We're going to go," I said. "Sarah." I crouched down in front of Emma. She was watching my face the way children do when they understand the weather has changed, but haven't been told the forecast. I held both of her hands. "Hey, you want to go find a poutine place? The real kind, with the squeaky cheese." She considered this with tremendous seriousness. "Is there one open?" "There is always one open in this country. That is basically the law." She almost smiled. "Are you sad?" "I'm okay, Bug. Are you okay?" She thought about it. Her nose scrunched. "I practiced a lot." "I know you did. You were going to be perfect." "Can I still wear the dress to get poutine?" "You can wear that dress anywhere you want for the rest of your life." She nodded, satisfied with this arrangement, and went back to Daniel, who had gotten out of the car and was standing quietly near the hood. He took her hand without being asked and opened the back door for her. I looked at my mother one more time. She was standing on the second porch step with her arms crossed and the expression of a woman waiting for a scene to finish. I didn't give her one. We drove back down the gravel road in the dark, the fence post lanterns sliding past the windows, and then we were on the county road heading back toward the highway, and Emma was already in the middle of another story involving her stuffed moose and a plot I couldn't quite follow. Daniel had the heat on. The radio was off. "She planned this," I said, quietly enough that Emma wouldn't track it over her own narration. "Yeah," Daniel said. "My mother knew. She knew before we left the city." "Probably." Emma practiced every day. He found my hand on the center console, held it. Didn't try to fix anything, which was the right call. We were about 15 minutes out when my father called. I looked at the screen, sat with it for a second. My father had been at that farmhouse. He had been there the whole time my mother was on those steps delivering her managed calm to me. And he had not come out. He had not sent a single message. Whatever he was calling to say now was either going to make things better or significantly worse. And I genuinely did not know which way it was going. Daniel looked at the screen, looked at me. "Up to you." I answered, "Sarah." My father's voice was not what I expected. It was not careful. It was not neutral. It had the particular quality of something compressed, quiet, but pressurized, the way a room sounds just before a window breaks. "Where are you?" "On the 7, heading back toward the 417. "How far?" "Maybe 15 minutes. "Dad, what?" "Turn around." He said it the way he used to say things when I was a kid and the situation was not open for discussion. "Not loud, just absolute. I need you to come back to this property right now. I'm not going to walk back in there after what just... This is not about the dinner." A pause. "I need you to trust me, Sarah. Turn the car around and come back." I looked at Daniel. He was already looking at me. Something in my father's voice that compressed, barely managed thing made the back of my neck go cold. "Okay," I said. "We're coming back." I ended the call and said, "Turn around." And Daniel didn't ask a single question. He found a side road and made the U-turn and headed back the way we came. Emma looked up from her moose. "Are we going back to the party?" "We're going to see Grandpa." "Oh," she considered. "Is Grandpa okay?" "Yeah, he just wants to see us." She accepted this and returned to her moose. I watched the dark fields along the county road and tried to figure out what my father was doing. He was a quiet man generally. He had always been the one who waited, who processed, who showed up after the fact with a measured response and a pot of coffee. Compressed anger wasn't something I had heard from him more than twice in my life. He was waiting at the end of the gravel road when we pulled in, not on the porch. At the gate like he had been standing there since the moment I answered. He looked older to me in the headlights than he usually did. Not smaller, heavier, somehow. The way people look when they have been holding something for longer than is good for them. Emma got out and ran to him with no hesitation at all, the way she always did with my father, and he caught her and lifted her and held her in a way that made something in my chest go tight. "Hey there, Sparkle Girl," he said. He held her for a long moment. Then he set her down and looked at Daniel. "Would you mind taking this one around to the backfield? I think there might still be some fireflies this time of year." Emma gasped. "Fireflies?" "Might be," my father said. "Worth checking." Daniel took Emma's hand and they disappeared around the side of the cedar barn. My father and I stood at the gate in the dark, and the sound of the party inside the farmhouse was muffled and distant. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Dad, He held up one hand. I was inside when your mother went out to the driveway. I heard what she said to you. I heard everything. He stopped. The silence lasted a few seconds. I didn't come out. I told myself it wasn't the right moment, that it was Britt's weekend, that causing a scene would only make things worse. I told myself I would talk to your mother later when things were calmer. He looked at me directly. That was the wrong call, and you and Emma deserved better from me tonight. I appreciate you saying that. I meant it, even though it also felt like being handed an umbrella after standing in the rain for 20 minutes. There's something else, he said. He took out his phone, turned the screen toward me. It was a text thread. Britt to my mother. My father had been quietly forwarded the full chain by my aunt earlier that afternoon. Britt's mother apparently had copied him by accident on one message, and the whole thread had unraveled from there. The message that mattered was timestamped 10:48 that morning. While I had been getting Emma ready, doing her hair twice because she wanted 2 braids, and then changed her mind to 1, while I had been packing the car and finding her dress and loading the ring pillow into a tote bag, my cousin had sent this. Mom, can you handle the Sarah thing before tonight? I don't want to deal with the whole situation at the dinner. Just tell her it's wedding party only, or that the kids' part of the evening got cut, or whatever works. And the ring pillow thing, Darren's mom already confirmed Peyton for that, so just make sure Emma's not expecting it. I can't have anything derailing this weekend. The Sarah thing, I read it twice. I was a thing. I was a situation to be handled the way you handle a logistics problem, the way you send a quick note to the caterer about a dietary restriction. She planned this, I said. It didn't come out as a question this morning, and your mother did exactly what she was asked. Of course she did. Your mother has been doing exactly what Britt's mother asks, and what Britt asks for the last 10 years, he said. And before that, it was other things. Tonight was not an exception. Tonight was just the version that involved Emma. That last sentence landed differently than the rest. I thought about Emma asking whether she was still doing the rings. I thought about her saying I practiced a lot in the flat, factual voice of a child who is not complaining, just reporting the truest thing she knows. I thought about the sparkle dress and the mousse and the ring pillow sitting in a tote bag in the trunk of Daniel's car. I want you to come inside, my father said. Dad, I'm really not for Britt, not for your aunt, not for any of that, he said it quietly. I want you to come inside because there are things that need to be said in front of the people who need to hear them. And I have spent too long deciding the moment wasn't right. He looked at me with an expression I had seen maybe twice in my entire life. Not soft, not uncertain, but resolved. The face of a man who has finally put down a very heavy object. Can you trust me? He asked. I thought about Emma on the driveway in her sparkle dress, asking if her grandma meant the ring job had changed. I thought about the way she had nodded when I said she could wear the dress anywhere, forever. The way she had accepted it and moved on, because she trusted me to tell her when things were okay. Yes, I said, I trust you. He nodded once and led me up the porch steps and pushed open the farmhouse door. The warmth hit first wood stove and roast, and the smell of the cedar walls that the house had held for 50 years. Then the sound. 30 people in various stages of conversation, the clink of wine glasses, a burst of laughter from the far side of the dining room, string lights across the ceiling beams. My grandmother's quilts still hanging on the wall by the staircase where they had always been. Heads turned when we came in. A few people smiled in the general vague way of party guests registering new arrivals. My mother appeared from the kitchen doorway almost immediately. Her face went through something rapid and complicated when she saw me standing next to my father's surprise, then alarm, then the gathering of composure that I had watched her perform my entire life. Robert, she said, his name like a warning. I'd like a moment, my father said. Not loudly, just clearly, the way he spoke when he meant it. If everyone could just give me a moment. The nearest conversations quieted, then the ones beyond those, the way a room goes silent, outward from its source. Someone near the back turned down the speaker, playing a playlist of Canadian folk music, old tragically hip, something from Gordon Lightfoot, and in the relative quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. My cousin Britt appeared in the archway between the sitting room and the dining room. She was in a champagne-colored silk robe, her hair pinned up, a glass of Prosecco in one hand. Her future mother-in-law, Darren's mother, was just behind her with the careful, attentive expression of someone watching a situation develop and calculating its implications. Britt looked at me, then at my father. Something in her face closed, the way a window closes before a storm. Dad, she said it to him. Not to me. What is she doing here? She's here, my father said, because she belongs here. Because she is my daughter. Because I should have been at that door myself when she arrived the first time. Britt's jaw tightened. This isn't the time to... I know you believe that. I know you sent a message to your aunt this morning asking her to make sure Sarah didn't come tonight. He said it evenly. Not as an accusation, as a fact, stated plainly. The way you state the weather? I know that the decision about Emma was made well before today, and that no one thought to call. The silence in the room had texture now, the kind that means everyone is very still and paying very close attention. Britt looked at my mother. My mother looked at the floor. My Aunt Britt's mother had materialized near the fireplace and was standing with her arms at her sides in the posture of a woman who has just realized the conversation she managed to avoid for years has finally arrived. There's a pattern in this family, my father said. Not to the room exactly, but not privately either. And I have been part of it by staying quiet, by deciding it wasn't the right time, by telling myself the uncomfortable things could wait. He paused. My father left this property to both his children equally, my sister and me. When he passed, the understanding was always that it would eventually come to the next generation, the same way split between my daughter and Britt. That was the understanding. What has actually been happening is something different. My mother's head came up. I spoke with our family solicitor in Ottawa this week. Not because of tonight, I want to be clear about that. Because of 3 years of watching things accumulate. He looked at Britt steadily. His voice didn't waver. The property arrangements are being revisited. I've instructed him to formalize what should have been formal a long time ago. Sarah's share of the inheritance is being documented. In writing. Legally. Britt's future mother-in-law made a small sound near the archway that she quickly converted into clearing her throat. Robert. My mother said his name differently this time. Not a warning. Something more like disbelief. Tonight of all nights. Yes, he said, tonight. Because if not tonight, it would have been some other night after some other incident, and there would always have been a reason it wasn't the right moment. He turned to me. I'm sorry for what happened at this door. I'm sorry it happened in front of Emma. I should have come outside the moment I heard your mother talking to you. I didn't. That's on me. I had made a promise to myself on the walk up the porch steps that I was going to hold it together. I had a decent record of holding it together in front of people, a skill I had developed over years, of being the one who was expected to be fine, to be independent, to not need anything from anyone, because she had already proven she could manage alone. My mother had called that quality admirable so many times. It had started to feel like a cage built from compliments. I was not entirely holding it together right now. I wasn't making a scene. I want to be clear about that. But my eyes were doing what eyes do when something that has been pressed down for a long time suddenly finds the pressure gone. Thank you, I said. It was the only thing I had. My mother said something sharp to my father about timing and family loyalty and the years she had put into keeping things together. Britt set her Prosecco glass down on the side table with a precise, careful click and looked at me for a long moment with an expression I couldn't categorize cleanly. Anger, yes, but underneath it, something more complicated. Something that almost looked like the beginning of shame. Darren's mother had recalibrated entirely and was speaking in a low voice to her son near the kitchen door. My aunt was staring at the fireplace. I looked at my father. Where are Daniel and Emma? Back field. Gate by the cedar barn. I went. The field behind the farmhouse was cool and dark, the grass still slightly damp from an earlier rain. There were lights strung between the fence posts for the wedding tomorrow, and they swayed very gently in the October wind. I followed the path around the barn and found Daniel crouched at the edge of the long grass with Emma beside him, both of them completely still. She found 3, Daniel said when he heard me coming. He stood slowly. Maybe 4. Emma didn't look up. She was watching something in the grass with the total, reverent concentration of a child in the presence of something she considers almost sacred. I stood beside Daniel, and he looked at me the way he always does, reading whatever is written on my face before I've decided how to say it. Okay? He asked quietly. My dad revised the property arrangements. In front of everyone, a beat. In front of everyone? In front of everyone? He exhaled slowly. Okay. He apologized for not coming to the door. He should have. I know he did, though. Emma stood up suddenly and turned around. Her face in the pale fence post light absolutely luminous with satisfaction. I held one, she announced. In my actual hands. It walked on my finger. Fireflies don't bite, I said. I know. She pulled herself up slightly. I wasn't scared. I was just being gentle because they're small. Daniel laughed. Low and real. I pulled Emma into me and pressed my face into the top of her head, into her hair that still smelled like the detangling spray we'd used that morning for her braid. And I held on for a moment longer than I needed to. Mommy, she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Can we still get poutine? I think I'm done with the field. Yeah, I said, let's go get poutine. We said goodbye to my father at the porch. He held Emma and told her she was the most dignified sparkle girl he had ever met, which she received with great seriousness. He told Daniel it was good to see him. He looked at me one last time with those heavier eyes, and I saw something in them I hadn't seen before. Not just the apology that had already been given, but something quieter. The particular look of a man who has decided to stop carrying something the way he has been carrying it. I'll call you this week, he said. I'll pick up, I said. Britt did not come to the door. We found a poutine place on the main strip in Almonte, the kind with laminated menus and local hockey photos on the walls, and a hand-lettered sign behind the counter that said squeaky keys or we refund you. Emma got the classic gravy, curds, fries, and ate it with the focused, methodical joy of a child who has been promised something and received exactly it. Daniel got the pulled pork version. He gave me half without being asked, which was accurate because I had been staring at it since it arrived. We sat in the orange light of that small restaurant, the three of us, while a mid-October Friday evening moved quietly outside the windows. A couple walking a husky. A group of teenagers outside the hockey arena down the street. A man in a senator's hat locking up a hardware store. I thought about the farmhouse, the quilts on the wall, the string lights on the porch. My cousin in her silk robe, the Prosecco glass set down with that precise, controlled click. What I felt was not satisfaction? Exactly. It wasn't relief either. It was something underneath both of those things. Quieter. The particular feeling of something that has been crooked for a long time being set. Not quite straight yet, but moved. My father called 3 days later, as he said he would. He told me the conversation with the solicitor had started 6 weeks before the rehearsal dinner, that he had been watching things accumulate for longer than I knew. He said the message Britt had sent, the one about the Sarah situation, was the last clear thing he needed to stop second-guessing himself. He also told me something I hadn't known. A piece of my grandmother's jewelry, a small sapphire brooch she had worn to every Christmas dinner I could remember. The one she had told me once was to go to her eldest granddaughter had been quietly given to Britt 2 years ago. My mother had arranged it. When my father asked about it, my mother said she had assumed Britt would appreciate it more, given that she was staying in the county and keeping the family traditions. I thought about that for a long time. Daniel and I drove up to Ottawa 6 weeks later to have lunch with my father, just the two of us, while Emma was at school. We sat in a Thai restaurant on Elgin Street, and he told me things he had never said out loud before about the years I was at Rehearsal, working 2 jobs to get through my degree, about decisions that had been made on my behalf without my knowledge, about the way my self-sufficiency had been quietly used as a reason to give me less. He didn't perform the telling of it. He just said it the way he said the thing on the porch plainly, like a man who has decided that directness is the only thing left to try. When I got angry, and I did, sitting in that restaurant on a Tuesday, with my soup going cold, he didn't manage it. He didn't smooth it over. He didn't tell me I was being unfair, or that I needed to see it from my mother's perspective, or that family was complicated. He let me be angry. He just sat there and let me. That was the thing I had waited the longest to be allowed. The sapphire brooch arrived in the mail 11 weeks after the rehearsal dinner. Padded envelope, no note. Just the brooch and the small velvet box my grandmother had always kept it in, my name written on the outside of the envelope in my mother's handwriting. I wore it to work the next morning. No occasion. A Wednesday. I clipped it to my lapel in the bathroom mirror and looked at it for a moment the way it caught the light. The way it looked. Exactly the way I remembered it, looking at the collar of my grandmother's Christmas blouse every December of my entire childhood. Emma came and found me while I was still looking at it. She was still in her pajamas, her hair wild from sleep, holding her stuffed moose by one antler. Mommy, you're wearing a jewel. It was my grandmother's. Your great-grandma. She stepped closer and examined it with great seriousness, her face close to my lapel. She reached out one careful finger and touched the setting, then pulled her hand back. It's blue, she said, with the satisfaction of someone confirming a hypothesis. It is. Okay, she said. Then, with the seamless subject change that is the exclusive gift of 6-year-olds, can I have the cereal with the little dinosaurs? Go start the bowl. I'll be there in a second. She thundered down the hallway. I looked at myself in the mirror for one more moment. The brooch, my own face. Then I went to make breakfast. Britt's wedding happened that October as planned. My father attended. My mother attended. Daniel and Emma and I did not. We spent that Saturday at home. Daniel made pancakes. Emma wore her sparkle dress to breakfast because she had decided it was also appropriate for Saturdays at home, and I had decided I was not going to argue with that logic. We watched a movie in the afternoon. The dog from next door got loose and ended up in our backyard. which became an extended negotiation. It was a very ordinary day. 8 months later, Britt sent me a message. It was long. It had clearly been written over several days. You could see the seams in it, the places where she had come back and added something, where she had deleted and started again. It said things like, I think I've spent my whole life being told I was the one who stayed and you were the one who left, and I let that become a way of thinking about you that wasn't fair. It said, I'm not asking you to forget it. I know I can't ask for that. It said, I just wanted you to know I've been thinking about it. It was not a perfect message. There were things it left out, things that probably should have been in it and weren't. But it was real in a way that I hadn't expected, and I sat with it for 5 days before I wrote back. When I did, I kept it short. I told her I appreciated her sending it. I told her I wasn't ready to act like none of it happened. I told her that if there was ever going to be something between us, it would have to be something built from scratch, not a return to the version that had already proven what it was made of. She replied, I understand. I can wait. I don't know what that becomes. I genuinely don't. What I know is this. The night I stood at the end of that gravel road in Almonte, with Emma in her sparkle dress while the lights from the farmhouse spilled across the field, I thought I was the one being locked out. I thought I was watching something through a window I wasn't allowed to open. It took me a long time to understand that what I was actually being freed from was the particular exhaustion of trying to belong to something that had already quietly decided I was a logistical inconvenience. My father calls every Sunday now. He and Emma talk about fireflies. He drove down to Toronto in March for her school's winter showcase and stood in the gymnasium with a terrible photograph of her recorder performance that he has since put in a frame on his desk, which she considers the highest possible honor. Daniel, for the record, has been telling me for 2 years that I deserved better. I didn't always let myself hear it. I hear it now. The sapphire brooch sits on my dresser on a small ceramic dish Emma painted at a studio last summer. Some mornings I put it on just to put it on, not for any occasion. Just because it's mine and it fits and it catches the light in a way that makes Emma say there's the jewel every single time she notices it, it's a small thing. But some mornings, small things are exactly enough.